Xenoblade Chronicles 2 came out in 2017, and while it certainly had its, questionable moments, it also had quite the interesting trio of main villains. While we're going to be focusing on one of them, Malos in particular today, their stories are all so intertwined that we'll also be covering significant amounts of Jin and Amalthus' story in order to help fully explain Malos' tale. Major spoilers for Xenoblade Chronicles, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Torna, the Golden Country, and minor spoilers for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Future Redeemed will follow. Prior to the events of Xenoblade, Malos was originally known as Logos, one of three components making up the Trinity processor meant to maintain the conduit, or gate. The conduit was a perpetual motion machine that defied the laws of energy that was originally found in Africa. It was being researched by a group known as Amalthus in Radamanthus, the first low orbit station, a giant space elevator which will be important a bit later on. Here it was discovered that the conduit functioned as a gate, hence the Japanese name, or door, and was able to connect multiple universes. Amalthus created the Trinity processor as a way of maintaining the gate. The Trinity processor, as the name implies, comprised three parts: Logos, the male persona, Pneuma, the female persona, and Ontos, somewhere in between, meant to act as an arbiter, predicated on the existence or opinions of the other two cores. Klaus, one of the scientists working at Radamanthus, had been working on his own project involving the conduit. Klaus had lost hope for mankind. He saw that people lived only for themselves, harbored desires but struggled to realize them, and had the idea that humanity in general could be so much more. With the conduit, he planned to open a gate to another world and change humanity forever. He enacted this plan when a group of rebels had launched an attack on Radamanthus as an effort to escape the attack. However, it did not go as planned. When Klaus opened the conduit, many people and things started disappearing into distant dimensions. Klaus himself was effectively ripped in half, with half of him, along with Ontos, being transferred into a new universe, the world of Bionis and Mechonis, in which Xenoblade Chronicles takes place, while his other half, along with Logos and Pneuma, stayed in the original universe. As a result of his experiments, Klaus's universe had fallen into ruin, and in order to rebuild it, Klaus created a particulate substance that could restore deteriorated matter, which would form the Cloud Sea. The Cloud Sea covered the planet and buried the remnants of Klaus's old world, which would become known as Martha. In order to populate the new world, Klaus created Titans and Blades, and thus Alrest was formed over the ruins of Martha. As a child, Amalthus and his mother were fleeing from a group of men. His mother collapses as she grows exhausted and pushes Amalthus down a small cliff so that he could escape and let the men capture her. While searching at night, Amalthus comes across the men's camp while they are sleeping and discovers that they had killed his mother. Angry, he grabs a rock and kills the men in their sleep. Later on in his life, Amalthus would heal a soldier, only to later witness him robbing a house and killing its inhabitants. Amalthus stops the soldier while he's attempting to kill a woman and kills the soldier himself. One of his blades, Minoth, recalls that this causes Amalthus to compare life on Alrest to a true hell, worse than the depictions by the paintings in Indal.
But I think real hell might be closer to something like this.
Facing a similar disdain for humans that Klaus did, Amalthus went searching for answers. He became the first to climb what those on Alrest would call the World Tree, though in reality it was just the ruins of Radamanthus, where this all began, to meet with the Architect, whom the people of Alrest revered as the god of their world. In actuality, the Architect was the half of Klaus that had been left behind when the conduit was opened. Upon reaching the top of the World Tree, Amalthus found it empty save for two core crystals, those of Logos and Pneuma, which he took with him back to Alrest as proof of his journey. The Architect refused to intervene with Amalthus' visit, as he had stopped caring about the humans of Alrest as well, noting that they had just fallen into similar patterns as previous humans. Back in Indal, he awakens one of the core crystals, Logos, which takes forms as Malos. One aspect of blades is that they will take on some of the personality traits of the one who awakens them, aka their driver. As such, Malos inherited Amalthus' hatred for the world. One day, when Amalthus was showing Malos a relic called the Aegis that he described as Indal's most sacred treasure, Malos destroyed it and claimed the title of Aegis for himself, as he was born of divinity and felt he deserved a title to reflect that.
That's what I will be called too. After all, I am born of divinity, not just some reflection.
Due to the emotions Malos inherited from Amalthus, he wielded his world-shaking power without restraint and unleashed all sorts of havoc across Alrest, acting independently of Amalthus. Amalthus disapproved of Malos' rampage and sought another driver to awaken the second core crystal. The core crystal containing Pneuma would be awakened as Mithra by a man named Adam. Amalthus asked Adam to rectify the mistake that he had made and erase Malos from the face of this world. Alright, now we can almost start talking about Malos. At the very start of Torna, the Golden Country, Malos launches an attack on the Sean Titan and destroys it, sinking it into the Cloud Sea. The Praetor of Indal, Radalis, worked together with the Empire of Moradane to cover up the true cause of the attack, with the official story being that Indal had sent in an armed expedition. Okay, now we can start focusing on Malos.
You're that eager to die? Then allow me to assist.
After taking down the Sean Titan, Malos returns to Indal to let Amalthus know that his next target will be the Tornan Titan. His target is the seal restraining Torna's power, but his reasons are as of now unknown. We can see some of Malos' initial attacks on Torna when Laura and Jin arrive at what was once the town of Feltley. Rather than finding the town, they discover a giant crater whose texture Laura describes as like glass. Before too long, the protagonists, Laura and co., learn that Malos had set his sights on the Tornan capital, Alrest, and so they set off to provide the protection. After politely waiting for the player to help 48 different people across Gormat and Torna... Wait, what was community level again? Malos launches his attack on Alrest, and here's where we can finally see his true nature. He decides to fight in person rather than from within one of his artifices because he got, and I quote, bored. While engaging Laura and the gang in combat, he reveals his plan is to break the seal to awaken the true form of the Tornan Titan, and use it to wreak havoc upon Alrest for everyone to see. After toying with our protagonists, he summons down some gargoyles to keep them busy while he goes to claim the seal, before fleeing to the core of Torna stating,
The end of the world is postponed a little, folks. If you want to take this off me, come find me in the Titan's core. That'll be the finale.
Adam's brother Zetar questions Amalthus, asking if he really was Malos' driver, to which he responds,
Certainly, I did give life to Malos, but when he acts, it's divine will.
The destruction of the world is the will of the divine.
Indeed it is.
The party arrives at the Tornan core, and Malos is about to awaken Torna's true power. They fight, however Malos can tell that Mithra is holding back, and he eggs her on into utilizing her full potential. He calls upon his siren and has it destroy the city of Alrest, where the party had left Milton, a child who was traveling with them, to keep him safe from Malos. Seeing the destruction of Alrest sends Mithra into a rage, causing her to summon her own siren, and awaken to her true power, that of Pneuma. In a fit of rage, she manages to destroy Malos' siren, damage his core crystal, but also deliver a fatal blow to the Tornan Titan, causing it to sink into the Cloud Sea below. Officially, Malos was presumed killed in the battle. Before we move on from Torna, we have to cover a couple of important topics that set up the events of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Amalthus poisons Radalis, the current Praetor of Indal, and becomes the new Praetor. He He sends troops to ambush Specia, where he assumed that Adam and Mithra were, in order to destroy the Aegis. He had grown afraid of the Aegis's power and wanted to dispose of them. Unfortunately for him, Adam and Pyra, an alternate persona Mithra had created after the destruction of Oresco, had fled to Leftheria to seal her away to prevent her power from being abused. Laura and Jin, however, are caught in the crossfire in Specia, and Laura is dealt a fatal blow. Jin was a special blade known as the Paragon of Torna, and Laura was his driver. The two of them had a particularly close bond, and the game even hints at some romantic tension between the two of them.
Don't worry. If I die, you'll just go to sleep. Someone will find you, reawaken you, someday. For us humans, being forgotten is a much worse fate than death. We struggle so hard to make our mark on the world.
Laura!
When you awaken, to you, it'll be like I never even existed. Jin, the thought of you forgetting me, it's like one heart is being ripped in two.
I won't forget you. I refuse to forget you. How could I ever?
Jin is absolutely heartbroken by the thought of awakening again with a new driver and no memories of his time with Laura, and so he goes to extreme measures to ensure that he will never forget her. Typically, when a driver dies, their blades will revert to a core crystal. When they are awoken by a new driver, they will begin anew with none of their previous memories. However, there is a way for a blade to survive after losing their driver, and that is to become a flesh eater. Jin consumes Laura's heart, and thus is able to live on and remember her after her death.
In the course of a lifetime, a man will see uncountable meetings and partings. Yet, as your life's candle sputters and dies, whose face is it that rises to greet you? Happy is the man who can sleep in the comfort of the smile he sees then. No, I don't wish for forever, even just for one moment. It's enough if it's with her. And yet, what is the man to do who has not been afforded that chance? The road stretches on without end. I cannot but walk down it. As long as I keep walking, I can hold out hope that one day the time may come when I see her smile again. That hope keeps me afloat.
You won't come back.
This is the road I must walk. Our paths won't cross.
Despite common belief, Malos had actually survived his fight with Mithra. Flash forward an unknown amount of time and he encounters a dejected Jin in a rainy alley. He extends support towards Jin and the two of them form the terrorist group Torna. Torna works to collect core crystals with two ultimate goals: acquiring Mithra's core crystal and killing the Architect. They recruit a few extra members in order to aid them in their goal: Mikhail, a blade eater who traveled with Laura and Jin, and 3 flesh eaters: Akos, Patroka, and Nia. Torna discovers that Mithra's core crystal is being stored on a ship buried in the Cloud Sea. In order to access it, they need a salvager to help raise the ship, and also a Leftherian to open the seal placed on the core crystal's chamber. Fortunately for them, our protagonist from Xenoblade Chronicles 2 is a young salvager from Leftheria named Rex, and that is where our story begins, 500 years after the end of Torna. They recruit Rex, have him raise the ship, and make their way to the innermost chambers. Rex opens the seal, and inside they find Pyra's body and weapon. Rex, without thinking, reaches out to touch her sword, and upon doing so is stabbed through the back by Jin. In a dreamlike state, he meets with Pyra and bonds with her, resurrecting him from the dead and becoming the new driver of the Aegis. The two of them then fight against Malos, and while they are able to hold him off for some time, Malos gains the upper hand when the Tornan battleship Monoceros shows up to provide fire support. Rex, Pyra, Nia, and her blade Dromark flee the scene on the back of Azurda, a small titan whom Rex calls Gramps. I'd cover their adventure, but this channel isn't called Video Game Heroes now, is it? The next time we encounter Malos is in the city of Fonsa Maima, the capital of the Orion Titan. He and Akos approach Amalthus' blade Minoth, who now goes by Cole, and ask him to surrender Pyra over to them. Cole refuses, and the pair kidnap his adoptive granddaughter, Iona, under the guise of wanting to help Cole. Malos then comes to Pyra in a dream to tell her that they had kidnapped Minoth's little brat, and in order for her safe return, to meet him at the place of her awakening, Elethra Ruins, just outside of Fonsa Maima, and that she should come alone. At the ruins, he and Pyra fight, and Malos seems to gain the upper hand until Rex shows up. Rex and friends join the fray against Malos, and to make it even, Akos joins on Malos' side. Malos and Akos seem unbeatable, with Akos demonstrating his ability to control the flow of ether to limit the abilities of Rex's blades. One of Rex's companions, Vandam, sacrifices himself while encouraging Rex to escape so that he can fulfill his duty to Pyra, which he of course refuses to do. Vandam's death sends Pyra into an enraged state, and she reverts back to Mithra, who is able to fight without relying on drawing ether from the air, and together they are able to force Malos and Akos to retreat. Malos is next seen briefly at the start of Chapter 6, talking with Jin after he was saved from Rex, where he questions if the hatred he was feeling was really his own, or if he was being influenced by someone else. Jin responds saying how he almost sounds human, to which Malos suggests that maybe blades and humans aren't so different after all. During a meeting with Praetor Amalthus, Mithra notes that Malos didn't seem to be fighting at full strength, as if the wounds that she had dealt to him during their battle 500 years prior hadn't fully healed yet. Mithra theorized that Malos wanted to make it back to Elysium at the top of the World Tree so that he could recover there. Amalthus confirms to her that the rumor of him being Malos' driver was true and claims that this is all his responsibility. As Praetor, he forbade travel to the World Tree after the Aegis War 500 years ago to stop this from happening again, but notes that the laws of man don't apply to Malos and considers lifting this restriction. Malos next encounters the party on the Tantal Titan. He was there with the rest of Torna seeking the Omega Fetter, an artifact that would allow him control over Ophion. Mikhail, Patroka, and Akos are bested by the party, but Jin reveals his true form and is able to easily overpower them. Victorious, Jin says that they'll be taking both the Omega Fetter and Pyra with them. Pyra works out that Malos needs her alive and threatens to annihilate herself with Mithra's artifice. Unwilling to call her bluff, Torna lets the party escape in exchange for Pyra handing herself over to them. Malos takes Pyra to the cliffs of Moritha, where he drains her energy and memories in order to restore his core crystal from its damaged form. While absorbing her memories, Malos sees an image of Artifice Ion and adjusts his plan to now awaken Ion in Elysium and use that to end the world.
Oh, that? It's not an Aegis anymore. Just a lump of meat.
Pyra had set a slight trap for Malos, however. Artifice Ophion sensed that she was in danger, and its autonomous attack instinct kicked in and it showed up to attack Malos and Jin. Malos, now in his restored state, is able to block Ophion's attack and launch his own counterattack back at it.
No matter. All it needs is a little reprogramming!
Rex and friends show up to the cliffs of Moritha, where Malos comes out to greet them. This time he's sporting a familiar-looking weapon and once again challenges the party. Nia, in her newly awakened blade form, is able to get the better of Malos with her ability to alter the replication rate of cells in his body, and Malos is actually defeated. However, he survives being flung from the cliff and shows up again when the party is confronting Jin. He taunts Rex about stealing Pyra's memories, and then he and Jin fight the party once more. Nia tries to use her cell replicating powers again, but Jin is able to reduce the temperature to nullify her efforts. Now on the back foot, Rex is able to awaken Pyra and Mithra's true form of Numa. Malos seems to step to the side as Rex and Jin duke it out, with Rex easily overpowering Jin thanks to Numa's strength. After Jin is defeated, Malos steps back in where he talks about their grand plans of destroying humanity, the world, and finally, the Architect. He claims his only purpose is to destroy and that he was the Endbringer, the ultimate weapon created by the Architect in order to erase existence. He summons the newly reprogrammed Ophion to destroy the party, but Numa is able to summon Siren to combat it. Ophion is able to get the upper hand, however, and destroys the cliff that everyone was standing on, sending both the party and Jin falling down to the land of Moritha below. Torna would fly the Monoceros down to Moritha to rescue Jin, who had been forced to make a temporary alliance with the party after being stranded down there, and then leave to climb the World Tree. While on their way up, Malos takes notice that Praetor Amalthus had started his own crusade on the World Tree, and exclaims,
Amalthus, you never disappoint.
As they near the top of the World Tree, Jin tells Malos to continue on ahead alone while he will wait for the boy. Malos is confused initially, but after confirming that was what Jin really wanted, he continues on to find the Architect.
It's been a while, Father.
Logos.
Klaus knows Malos has shown up to kill him, but mentions that there is no need to rush, as he is fading anyways and will be gone soon enough. Malos asks if his choice is really his own, to which Klaus responds with, "It is a choice you made together," which seems to satisfy Malos, as he then thanks Klaus for making him, and leaves to continue onward to Elysium to awaken Ion.
Malos!
Just in time for the final act, boy. I've saved you the best seats in the house.
Malos awakens Artifice Ion and waits for Rex at the top of the World Tree for their final showdown. Rex initially tries to talk Malos out of his path of destruction, but Malos claims he's far beyond saving and attacks.
I'll show you the end of the world! With Ion!
After a hard-fought battle, Rex and Numa manage to channel energy from Siren and use it to destroy Artifice Ion as well as Malos' core crystal. Finally beaten for good, Malos reflects on his existence and wonders what life would have been like if he and Rex had met sooner. Rex mentions if only he had been Malos' driver, then things might have been different, to which Malos responds that there was only ever one driver for him before dissipating.
All in all, it wasn't so bad.
Malos.
Today, we use our power to fell a god, and then seize our destiny!
Wait, that's from a different game. How'd that get in here?
The Aegis. Malos.
But what kind of revelation is this? What kind of salvation? Could anyone call this salvation? His hope caused this, or his despair.
Malos is an interesting case. He never has any illusions about the fact that he's the villain of his own story, and yet never once thinks to change the path that he's walking. So let's take a deeper look into what's going on under the hood.
Perhaps he doesn't even need a reason. It seems to be a deep-seated drive. An instinct. As natural as breathing.
As I mentioned earlier, when Amalthus bonded with Malos' core crystal, parts of his personality got impressed onto Malos, which is something that can happen when a driver bonds with a new blade. Amalthus had a negative view of humanity due to a few key experiences that he had, and thus, so did Malos. The two of them differ greatly in the scope of their plans, though, as well as their presentation to the player, which makes them have an interesting comparison. Initially, they're presented as complete opposites. Within a very short time of meeting Malos, he and Jin are already shown to be the bad guys, while Amalthus, even to the player, is portrayed as being on Rex's side. This only gets more interesting once Amalthus's true colors are revealed. On the surface, they both seem fairly similar in ambition, and yet neither seems particularly fond of the other. Amalthus seems to disapprove of Malos's wanton destruction, and Malos doesn't feel that Amalthus is dedicated enough to removing the unworthy from the world.
The Praetorium, the Believers, I despise them all. Humans aren't fit to breathe our air. So, I'm going to give you what you always wanted.
But I never...
I'm clearing out the worthless. Isn't that why you sought the Architect? Why you climbed the World Tree? Yet look at you now.
Malos's ego is another interesting point of discussion. He has a level of arrogance about him, likely coming from his sheer strength, as well as the knowledge that he was a gift from the god of this world, the Architect. And to be honest, this ego is somewhat deserved, as he does seem to be far and away the strongest being in Alrest until Adam awakens Mithra. We can see this ego demonstrated a few times. When Malos is shown Indal's most sacred treasure, an artifact named the Aegis, he destroys it and claims the title for himself. After all, he was born of divinity and wasn't just a reflection. Later on, when he launches his assault on Oresco, his arrogance has him attack the city not with his artifices, but on foot as he claims he got bored. He wanted to see humans suffer up close, and letting Siren have all the fun was getting old. And during the final confrontation on Torna, he recognizes that Mithra is holding back and eggs her on into unleashing her true power. It obviously would have been smarter for Malos to just take the safer option in most of these situations, but as he mentioned, that would be boring for him. There's only one other person comparable in strength to him, Numa, and Mithra seems hesitant to utilize her true powers, so Malos feels like he's able to act however he wants and still come out on top. This does end up being his downfall at the end of Torna though, as Numa is able to overpower him and damage his core crystal. And so in Xenoblade 2, while he does still have a level of arrogance about him, he seems to be much more careful, especially in situations where Mithra/Pyra is concerned. He has Akos accompany him to Fonsa so that he can restrict the flow of ether to hinder Pyra's abilities, and he takes Pyra's threat of self-annihilation seriously in the Kingdom of Tantal and lets the party go. Related to his ego, we can see that Malos also loves toying with his prey. One particularly good example of this is at the Cliffs of Moratha when he and Jin return Pyra's body to the party. He taunts Rex and works to get under his skin as he feels the two of them strongly have the upper hand.
She betrayed herself as an Aegis, forming a bond with a piece of human trash. She tried so pathetically hard to hold on to her memories of you. But in the end, I got them all. She put up a brave little fight. Please don't steal my memories. Cute stuff like that. Sorry, boy. You came to this desolate place for nothing. Do you really want this useless husk? Go ahead and take it!
Another important aspect of Malos is his bond with Jin. After the events of Torna, Jin became lost, despondent, and overall a shell of his former self. While adventuring with Laura, Jin had found a diary of his that he kept while with his former driver, Ornelia. He seems distraught over what he finds in the journal as he decides to keep it a secret from Laura. When Laura later mentions that one day she'll die, meaning Jin would lose his memories and revert to his core crystal, Jin reflects on what he wrote down in his previous life.
If I were a praying man, I'd pray this journal finds its way to you. Trusting that it will, I will use these last words to pass down a means of carving the bond between myself and my partner into this flesh.
He describes the process of becoming a flesh eater, implying that he had a similar crisis while paired with Ornelia of being terrified about losing his memories of her as well. And when Laura is fatally wounded by Amalthus' troops, Jin makes the decision to never forget her and consumes her heart, allowing him to live on after her death. Now, you might be wondering how this ties back to Malos. When Malos happens upon Jin in a rainy alley, he senses something about Jin. He somehow identifies that the two of them share a similar sentiment of being lost in the world and extends his support towards Jin.
Ugh, what a stench! They let beggars roam free in this town? You're a blade, aren't you? Where's your driver? Dead drunk in a ditch? No, somehow I don't think that's it. The name's Malos. I'm the same as you.
The two of them then form Torna in their shared suffering so that they can kill the architect who created this miserable world that they both hated. Jin is the only person that Malos seems to extend any kind of sympathy towards. To everyone else, Malos seems to only express disdain or at best apathy, but we can see that he actually cares about Jin. He urges Jin not to be too reckless upon temporarily splitting up from the rest of Torna, shows concern when Jin puts himself in danger in Temperentia, and ensures that he'll help Jin keep his promise of never forgetting Laura. We can see that Malos is capable of caring and showing some form of emotions, but we only ever really see this happen with regards to Jin. He and Jin's bond culminates near the top of the World Tree when Jin tells Malos to go on ahead while he waits for Rex. After confirming that Jin was sure, Malos comes in to give him a hug and whisper something into his ear. We can only speculate what Malos said and how he was feeling at the time, but to me, it seems like he knew that he wouldn't be seeing Jin again, and wanted to give his best friend a proper farewell. For the vast majority of his existence, Malos believed his role was to be the Endbringer. Ever since his awakening, his only goal was destruction, but after being defeated by Mithra at the end of Torna, he starts to question things. He realizes that his thoughts and feelings might not be his own and wants to search for answers. We see the result of his searching during the final confrontation with Rex, where Malos has a lot of interesting dialogue.
Akos is dead, you bastard. So is Petroka. And Jin.
Figured as much.
Is that all?
What? You want me to weep and deliver a eulogy? What good would that do? They all desired oblivion, and now they've achieved it. Least I can do is send them off with a smile.
Malos, is this really what you want?
Huh?
Is this what you want? Malos?
I don't understand the question.
You must understand by now that none of this is your own will. You have to see all of this came from Amalthus.
Even if that's true, so what? And don't give me some weak-ass crap about how I should repent or whatever.
Why don't you want to hear the truth?
Here's the thing. I don't give a rat's ass what you think, brat! So blades become titans, and titans give life to humans. Honestly, who even gives a damn? They can become whatever they want. But that man, he'd lost everything. He no longer wanted anything. He didn't even want to live anymore. And despite that, his life was the one thing he hadn't lost. Because he couldn't!
The thought of you forgetting me, it's like one heart is being ripped in two.
Words can be a curse. That curse was what kept him tied down here. A wretched tale, isn't it? This whole world is a wretched place.
Do not forget that you too are a part of that world. If it were not for you, for Amalthus, both Jin and Laura's lives may have taken quite different paths.
Exactly. That's exactly it. You've gotten smarter with age, huh? I'm a wretched being, too. A hideous monster, far beyond saving! So, let's end this now.
Don't you feel anything? Father's sadness, the world he longed for.
How could I? That isn't my role in this world.
This man, does he mean to?
Come at me, kid! Come, my partner! Give me all you've got. You better show me all of it! The extent of your will! Show me why you're here in this world!
Now, there's a lot going on in there, so let's break down some of it. Malos seems to be resigning himself to believing that he has no agency over his life's direction, so why should he bother trying to change? He's barely fazed by the deaths of Petroka and Mikhail, because being sad about it wouldn't accomplish anything. But as we just discussed, Malos has a soft spot for Jin. Jin's suffering had become his suffering. The world that allowed this kind of suffering to exist was wretched and needed to be destroyed. Azurda and Mithra both try pleading with Malos to have him understand what he's doing, but the problem is that he already does. Azurda points out that Jin and Laura could have lived very different lives if not for Malos and Amalthus, and Malos' reaction is basically, yeah, you're right. He acknowledges the responsibility that he had in Jin's situation, but claims that he's wretched along with the rest of the world, far beyond saving, and that they should stop wasting his time and fight him if they want any form of resolution. Mithra points out Klaus's original plan for this world, the sadness and disappointment he saw in humanity, and hoped the world of Alrest would have been able to change that, but Malos doesn't feel his role in the world is to understand any of that.
Jin told me to take care of you. In his place, you know. Jin never wanted to die. He just wanted to connect with you. He did it because you showed him a path.
And how many people died because of it? You'd forgive him just like that?
Forgiving isn't that easy, but that's just the world we live in. We need to find a way forward within that world.
In the end, Rex ties it all back to Jin. As we've covered, Malos' feelings regarding Jin seem to be the only strand of humanity that he demonstrates, and so Rex gives a last-ditch effort to appeal to that. This scene also does a good job at painting Rex as the opposite of Malos. On a base level, Rex is this optimistic kid, afraid of killing, with his main driving factor being the bonds that he's formed with everyone. While Malos is pessimistic, uses killing as his solutions and couldn't care less about almost anyone else. Both characters look at the actions of Jin, and Malos sees an unforgivable reign of terror that he uses to justify why the world has to end, while Rex acknowledges that forgiving is difficult, but it's necessary in order to advance as humanity. Knowing he'd been defeated, Malos finally takes the opportunity to take a different view on life. He muses on how things could have been different had he met Rex earlier, before commenting that all in all, things weren't so bad. Morag notes that it seemed he'd finally found a meaning to his life, but what did she see exactly? Again, we can only speculate on exactly what she meant by this. Personally, I view it as it was finally clear to him what his role in the world was. At the end of everything, he realized his role as the gatekeeper for humanity. When acting as the Endbringer, he felt it was his duty to destroy the wretched world, but upon being defeated by Rex, he realized that some humans might not be beyond salvation after all. He'd finally recognized his actual role as the final boss, in both the game and metaphorical sense. Since people had risen up to stop him, maybe his existence wasn't all for naught if he was able to have people band together to fight for the world that they care about. Malos' journey comes to a close as the party is fleeing the World Tree. Numa stays behind so that she can destroy it after everybody else has made it to safety, when Malos uses his last bit of energy to ask her a simple question.
So tell me, how was it?